The billionaire let her go unaware she was pregnant with his twins. 2 years later, they showed up for him. The conference room fell silent. Kevin Peterson stood frozen by the window, his face drained of color as he stared at the 2 toddlers who had just walked through the door holding their mother's hands. Stephanie Campbell watched the recognition hit him like a physical blow. The way his eyes moved from Emma to Noah and back again. The way his lips parted but no sound came out. The way 22 months of mathematics suddenly crashed through his legendary composure. How old are they? His voice was barely a whisper. 22 months. Stephanie's tone carried the sharp edge of a woman who had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. Born January 15th. Twins. Noah and Emma Campbell. Campbell. He repeated her last name like it was a verdict. Yes, my name. The name of the woman who raised them alone while you were busy acquiring companies and attending yacht parties. I did not know. Kevin moved toward the table, toward the children, then stopped himself before he got too close. Stephanie, I swear to you, I did not know. Why did you not tell me? Tell you when, Kevin? The laugh that escaped her held no humor. Tell you when you were in back-to-back meetings for 3 days straight while I waited in our apartment for a conversation that never happened. When your assistant informed me that you had left for Tokyo without mentioning you would be gone for 2 weeks. When I came to this very building to say goodbye, and you could not be bothered to step out of a strategy session. You, Daddy. Emma's small voice cut through the tension like a knife through silk. She was looking at Kevin with the uncanny directness of a toddler who had not yet learned that some questions should not be asked. You, our daddy. The question hung in the air between them all. Stephanie felt her heart stop. She had not told them about their father. They were too young to understand, she had reasoned. But Emma had been asking questions lately, pointing at other children with their fathers, wanting to know where hers was. Kevin looked at Stephanie, silently asking permission to answer. She hesitated for a long moment, every protective instinct screaming at her to grab her children and run. But she had come here for a reason. She had brought them here for a reason. And that reason required honesty, no matter how much it cost. She gave the barest nod. Yes. Kevin's voice cracked on that single syllable. I am your daddy, but I only just found out about you, so I missed a lot of time. I am very sorry about that. Okay, Emma said simply, with the devastating casualness that only children possess. I forgive you. Kevin made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, pressing his hand over his mouth to contain whatever emotion was trying to escape. Stephanie watched the most powerful man she had ever known crumble before her eyes, undone by the casual absolution of a 2-year-old who had no idea what she was forgiving. And standing there in that moment, watching history collide with the present in ways none of them had planned, Stephanie Campbell realized that everything she thought she knew about this story was about to change. But I am getting ahead of myself. Because to understand how we got to this conference room, to this moment, to these children who were meeting their father for the first time, you need to understand where it all began. And where it began was nothing like where it ended up. 3 years ago, before the twins, before the heartbreak, before Stephanie Campbell became the self-made millionaire who walked into Kevin Peterson's empire with proof of everything he had lost, there was a tech conference in Austin, Texas. And there was a woman who made the mistake of falling in love with a man who did not know how to choose anything over his ambitions. The convention center in Austin was the kind of place where dreams were either launched or destroyed, sometimes both in the same afternoon. Stephanie Campbell stood near the back of the keynote hall, her arms crossed, her expression skeptical, as Kevin Peterson commanded the stage with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. He was talking about the future of artificial intelligence, about disruption and innovation and all the buzzwords that tech billionaires love to throw around, as if they were inventing concepts rather than just repackaging them for investor presentations. And most of the audience was eating it up, nodding along, already mentally drafting emails about partnership opportunities. But Stephanie was not nodding. She was a 26-year-old software developer with a revolutionary idea and an apartment she could barely afford. She had spent 6 months building a prototype that could transform how small businesses manage their operations. She had come to this conference hoping to find investors, mentors, someone who might believe in what she had built. Instead, she was watching a billionaire get basic programming concepts wrong while 500 people pretended not to notice. When Kevin opened the floor for questions, Stephanie's hand went up before she could talk herself out of it. Yes, Kevin pointed to her, his smile polished and professional. The woman in the blue jacket. Stephanie took a breath. You said that Machine learning algorithms can be developed without significant human oversight. But your own company's quarterly report shows that 63% of your AI projects required human intervention to correct bias issues. So my question is this: are you describing the future you are actually building, or the future you are selling to people who do not read quarterly reports? The silence in the room was immediate and absolute. 500 heads turned to look at the woman who had just publicly challenged Kevin Peterson on his own stage. Kevin's smile did not waver, but something shifted in his eyes. Something that looked almost like interest. That is an excellent question. He leaned forward slightly, his attention suddenly focused entirely on her. And you are absolutely right. I was oversimplifying for the sake of a cohesive narrative. The truth is more complicated. The truth usually is. What is your name? Stephanie Campbell. Well, Stephanie Campbell. Kevin's voice had changed, become more genuine somehow. You just made this the most interesting keynote I have given in 3 years. The after party was in a hotel ballroom that probably cost more per hour than Stephanie's monthly rent. She had almost not come, feeling out of place among the venture capitalists and startup founders who spoke in funding rounds and equity splits. But something about the way Kevin Peterson had looked at her during that question and answer session had made her curious. She was nursing a glass of wine near the window when she felt someone approach. You know, most people in that room agreed with everything I said. Stephanie turned to find Kevin Peterson standing beside her, 2 glasses of champagne in his hands, offering one to her. Everyone in that room wanted something from you. Stephanie did not take the champagne. I just wanted you to be right, and you were not. Kevin laughed, a genuine sound that surprised her. So you showed up at my keynote, publicly corrected me, and now you will not even accept a drink from me. I have wine. You have terrible wine. He set one champagne glass down on a nearby table, keeping the other. I could tell from across the room. What you need is good champagne and a conversation with someone who appreciates being challenged. Why would I want that? Because Kevin's eyes met hers, and something in his expression shifted from charming to honest. I have not felt this intellectually alive in years. Everyone around me is too busy agreeing to actually engage. You engaged. That is rare. That is valuable. Have dinner with me. Stephanie should have said no. She knew even then that men like Kevin Peterson were dangerous to women like her. They collected people the way they collected companies, finding value in them until they found something more valuable. But there was something in his eyes that night. Something that looked almost like loneliness beneath all that confidence. Something that made her think maybe, just maybe, he was more than what he appeared to be on stage. One dinner, Stephanie heard herself say, and you are paying. Obviously. Kevin's smile was different now, softer. I would not dream of anything else. That dinner became 2, then 3, then a week in San Francisco where Kevin showed her his world, the penthouse apartment with views of the entire city, the restaurants where reservations were impossible unless you were someone who mattered, the life of a man who had built an empire before he turned 30. And Stephanie, against every instinct telling her to be careful, began to fall. He was not what she expected. Behind the billionaire persona was a man who stayed up until 3 in the morning discussing code optimization, who got genuinely excited about new programming languages, who listened when she talked about her prototype like it was the most important thing in the world. I want to show you something, Stephanie said one night, 3 months into their relationship. They were in Kevin's apartment, the city glittering below them, and she had been gathering her courage all evening. Show me. She pulled up her laptop and walked him through the software she had been building, the interface that could revolutionize small business operations, the algorithms she had developed alone in her tiny apartment while the rest of the world slept. Kevin watched intently, asking questions, taking notes, his eyes lighting up the way they did when he encountered something genuinely innovative. Stephanie, he said when she finished, this is brilliant. This is actually genuinely brilliant. Have you filed patents? Not yet. I have not had the money. Let me help. He reached for her hands. Let me invest. Let me connect you with the right people. I do not want your money, Kevin. Then take my advice. His grip on her hands tightened. File those patents immediately. Tomorrow. This idea is too good to be unprotected. Looking back, Stephanie would wonder if that moment was when everything started to go wrong. If showing him her work, trusting him with her most precious creation, had planted seeds that would later grow into betrayal. But in that moment, all she felt was loved. All she felt was seen. She moved into his apartment the following month. The first few months of living together were everything Stephanie had dreamed they would be. Late-night coding sessions side by side. Morning coffee on the balcony watching the fog roll across the bay. Plans for a future that seemed golden and infinite. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. Kevin's calendar started filling up in ways it had not before. Meetings that ran long. Calls that could not be rescheduled. Emergencies that always seemed to happen right when they had made plans. Rain check on dinner tonight. His text would read, board meeting running over. Tomorrow, I promise. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became next month. And Stephanie found herself spending more and more evenings alone in an apartment that had started to feel like a gilded cage. She tried to talk to him about it. One night when he finally came home before midnight, she was waiting in the living room with a speech prepared. Kevin, we need to talk. He was already checking his phone. About what? About us. About the fact that I have seen you for approximately 4 hours in the past 2 weeks. About the dinner with my parents you missed. About the trip to Italy that keeps getting postponed. Kevin sighed, setting his phone down with visible reluctance. Stephanie, you know how demanding this time is. The merger alone requires. There is always a merger. Stephanie felt her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. There is always something more important than showing up. I am not asking for all of your time, Kevin. I am asking for some of it. I am asking to be a priority occasionally. You are a priority. Then act like it. He promised to do better. He always promised to do better. And for a few days, sometimes even a week, he would. He would leave work early, bring home flowers, make dinner reservations at places that did not require months of advanced planning. But the pattern always reasserted itself. The meetings would multiply. The calls would become urgent, and Stephanie would find herself alone again, wondering when she had become someone who waited for a man who never seemed to arrive. The breaking point came 6 months into their relationship. Stephanie had been working on finalizing her patents, getting closer to launching her company, building something that was entirely her own. She had planned a small launch party, just friends and a few potential investors, to celebrate the milestone. Kevin had promised to be there, had looked her in the eyes and sworn that nothing would keep him away. He did not come. She waited for 2 hours, making excuses to the guests, checking her phone every 30 seconds for a text that never arrived. By the time midnight came and went, everyone had gone home, and Stephanie was alone in a rented venue with champagne no one had drunk and dreams that suddenly felt foolish. When Kevin finally called the next morning, his excuse was Tokyo, a deal that could not wait, a flight that had left before he could reach her. I tried to call, he said, but the time difference. Stephanie did not yell. She did not cry. She simply felt something inside her go quiet in a way that felt permanent. When are you back? 3 days. Maybe 4. I will make it up to you, Stephanie. I promise. But she had stopped believing his promises. 3 days later, she was still alone. Kevin had extended his trip twice. His texts had become shorter, more distracted, the perfunctory check-ins of someone going through the motions rather than someone genuinely present. And Stephanie had started making plans of her own. She found an apartment in Seattle, smaller than what she had grown used to, but hers. She contacted a lawyer about her patents and her business structure. She began the process of extracting her life from Kevin Peterson's orbit. On the day she decided to tell him, she came to Peterson Technologies hoping to have one final conversation, hoping that maybe, if she explained in person, he would understand. He would fight for her. He would prove that she mattered more than the meetings and mergers and endless emergencies. She waited in the lobby for 45 minutes. Kevin's assistant had apologized repeatedly, explaining that Mr. Peterson was in a crucial strategy session and could not be disturbed. Could she wait? Could she come back tomorrow? Could she perhaps leave a message? Stephanie looked around that marble lobby, at the glass walls and the expensive art and the endless parade of people who all seemed more important than she was. And she realized that she had become exactly what she had sworn she would never be, someone who waited for a man who could not be bothered to notice she was leaving. She walked out without leaving a message. She was gone by the time Kevin returned from Tokyo. The Seattle apartment was small and cold, and for the first 3 weeks, Stephanie threw herself into work with a desperation that bordered on obsession, building Campbell Innovation from nothing, filing her patents, reaching out to every contact she had ever made. She told herself she was fine, that she was better off, that Kevin Peterson had been a detour, not a destination. And then the nausea started. At first, she thought it was stress. The upheaval of moving, the pressure of launching a company, the emotional toll of walking away from the first man she had ever truly loved. But when the nausea persisted, when her exhaustion became something deeper than tired, when her body started sending signals she could not ignore, Stephanie bought a pregnancy test. Then another, then 3 more. They were all positive. She sat on the floor of her tiny bathroom, surrounded by plastic sticks that all told the same story, and felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Pregnant, with Kevin Peterson's children. Twins, as she would discover at her first ultrasound, identical heartbeats pulsing on the monitor like an accusation. Her first instinct was to call him, to pick up the phone and tell him that everything had changed, that they had created something together, that maybe this was a sign they should try again. But then she remembered the 45 minutes in the lobby, the missed launch party, the Tokyo trip that extended indefinitely, the endless pattern of promises that never materialized into presence. A man who could not make time for a girlfriend would destroy children who expected a father. A man who chose meetings over milestones would not magically transform because biology had intervened. And Stephanie, looking at those twin heartbeats on the screen, made a decision that would shape the next 2 years of her life. She would not tell him. She would build a life for her children that did not depend on a man who had already proven he could not be depended on. She would be enough because she had to be, because there was no other option. It was the hardest choice she had ever made. And watching the way Kevin crumbled in that conference room 2 years later, seeing the devastation in his eyes as he learned what he had missed, Stephanie would wonder sometimes if it had been the right one. But that was a question for later. In that moment, on that bathroom floor, all she knew was that she had to survive. For herself, for them, and survival meant walking away completely. The next 22 months were the hardest of Stephanie's life. She built Campbell Innovation while pregnant, landing her first contract at 7 months when she could barely fit behind a desk. She gave birth alone, Miranda holding one hand while she pushed, the twins arriving 11 minutes apart, Emma first and furious, Noah second and watchful. She learned to feed 2 infants at once, to function on 2 hours of sleep, to code with a baby in each arm and a deadline breathing down her neck. She pitched investors with spit up on her shoulder and closed deals between diaper changes. And slowly, impossibly, her company began to grow. The software she had developed, the same prototype she had shown Kevin that night in his apartment, found its market. Small businesses started adopting it, then medium businesses. Then 3 Fortune 500 companies came calling, and suddenly Campbell Innovation was worth $47 million and Stephanie Campbell was being featured in business magazines as a self-made success story. She never mentioned the twins' father. When journalists asked about her personal life, she deflected with practiced ease. When investors inquired about her support system, she introduced them to Miranda, her best friend who had relocated to Seattle to help raise the babies, and that was enough. Kevin Peterson was a closed chapter, a cautionary tale, a mistake she had learned from and moved beyond, or so she told herself. And then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The twins were napping, and Stephanie was reviewing quarterly projections when her lawyer's number appeared on her screen. "Daniel, what is going on? We need to talk." Daniel Morrison's voice was uncharacteristically serious. "Have you been following the Mitchell lawsuit against Peterson Technologies? The intellectual property case?" Stephanie frowned. "I've seen the headlines. What does that have to do with me?" Campbell Innovation is being named as a potential witness. The plaintiffs are alleging a pattern of IP theft at Peterson Technologies, and they have identified similarities between your patented software and a product that Peterson launched 18 months ago. The blood drained from Stephanie's face. Similarities. Stephanie. Daniel paused. "They are alleging that Peterson Technologies stole your intellectual property. And based on the evidence I have reviewed, I think they might be right." The lawsuit was massive. 12 companies alleging that Peterson Technologies had systematically appropriated their innovations, built products on stolen foundations, profited from ideas that belonged to others. The damages being sought exceeded $3 billion. And Campbell Innovation software was central to the pattern the plaintiffs were establishing. Stephanie spent 3 days reviewing the evidence. The product Peterson Technologies had launched 18 months ago. The code architecture that bore unmistakable similarities to her own. The timeline that showed development beginning suspiciously soon after she had walked out of Kevin's life. Her prototype, the one she had shown him that night. the one she had trusted him with. Someone had taken her work. Someone at Peterson Technologies had built something from the blueprint she had shared in confidence. And whether Kevin had known or not, whether he had ordered it or simply failed to prevent it, the result was the same. Her ideas, his profit. The irony was almost unbearable. "You have options," Daniel told her. "You can join the class action suit. You can pursue independent litigation. Or you can negotiate directly with Peterson Technologies for a settlement and licensing agreement. What do you recommend?" "Honestly," Daniel leaned back in his chair, "I recommend you walk into that building and show Kevin Peterson exactly who he let walk away. Then let him decide how much it is going to cost him." And so Stephanie found herself booking a flight to San Francisco, arranging for Miranda to watch the twins, then changing her mind and deciding to bring them. If Kevin Peterson was going to see what he had lost, he was going to see all of it. The private jet had been an indulgence, a statement. She had built Campbell Innovation from nothing, and now she could afford to arrive in style. But sitting in that jet, watching her children sleep, feeling the old anxiety rise as San Francisco approached, Stephanie wondered if she was making a mistake. If confronting Kevin with the twins was an act of justice or an act of cruelty. If she was doing this for legal reasons or personal ones. Maybe both, she admitted to herself. Maybe it could be both. The Peterson Technologies building gleamed in the rain as they approached. Stephanie looked at Emma, who was pressing her face against the car window with fascination, and at Noah, who was methodically organizing the snacks in his bag by color. Her children. Her triumph. Her proof that she had survived and thrived, and become something more than Kevin Peterson's abandoned girlfriend. "Are we there yet, Mama?" Emma asked for the 6th time. "We are here, baby." Stephanie took a breath that was meant to be steadying but felt more like preparation for battle. "We are definitely here." The security guard at the front desk tried to hide his surprise when he saw the twins, but Stephanie caught the flicker of confusion as he processed her arrival with 2 toddlers in tow. "Miss Campbell, welcome. I was not informed you would be bringing guests. They go where I go." Stephanie kept her voice pleasant but firm. It was not a request. The elevator ride seemed to take forever. Emma pressed her nose against the glass wall, watching the city shrink beneath them with the wonder that only children possess. Noah stood very still, his dark eyes, Kevin's eyes, taking in everything with analytical precision. "Mama, high," Emma observed. "Very high. Yes, baby. We are going very high. Higher than Stephanie had ever imagined going, when she had been a struggling developer with a dream and a boyfriend who did not know how to show up. Now she was a CEO with a $47 million company, walking into her former lover's empire with evidence that his success might have been built on her stolen foundation. Life had a strange sense of poetry sometimes. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that screamed wealth in the particular way only Silicon Valley money could. Sustainable materials and statement art pieces, and the kind of quiet that came from excellent soundproofing and employees who knew better than to make noise. A young woman with flawless makeup rose from behind a curved desk. "Miss Campbell." "I am Natalie. Mr. Peterson is expecting you, but I should mention." She hesitated, her professional smile faltering. "He was not aware you would be bringing children. His awareness is not my concern." Natalie's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she recovered with the practiced composure of someone accustomed to managing difficult situations. "Of course. This way, please." They walked down a corridor lined with windows that framed San Francisco like a postcard. Stephanie had been in this building once before, 2 years ago, when she had waited 45 minutes for a conversation that never happened. The memory pressed against her chest like a bruise that had never fully healed. "Here we are." Natalie stopped outside a set of double doors. "The main conference room. Mr. Peterson is waiting inside." She opened the doors, and Stephanie stepped through with her children flanking her like tiny bodyguards into the room where her past and her future were about to collide. And now we are back where this story began. That conference room. That moment. Kevin Peterson's face draining of color as he stared at the twins who had just walked through the door. But now you understand what it cost Stephanie to walk through that door. Now you understand the weight of those 22 months, the struggle and the survival and the transformation from heartbroken girlfriend to self-made success. And now, the real story can begin. Kevin stood frozen by the window, his composure completely shattered. The man who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, who had built an empire on certainty and control, looked like someone who had just watched the foundations of his world crumble. "How old are they?" His voice was barely a whisper. 22 months. born January 15th. Twins, Noah and Emma Campbell. Campbell. He repeated the name like it was a verdict. Not Peterson. No, not Peterson. Stephanie guided the twins to chairs at the massive conference table. They did not need your name. They have mine. Kevin moved toward the table, then stopped himself, seemingly afraid to get too close. His eyes kept moving between the children, cataloging features, making calculations, doing mathematics that were 22 months too late. They have my eyes. His voice broke on the observation. Noah has my eyes. Yes, he does. And Emma. Kevin studied his daughter with an intensity that made Stephanie's protective instincts flare. She has your cheekbones, your expressions, but something about her mouth, the way it curves. Your mother, Stephanie said quietly. I saw photographs once. Emma looks like your mother. The comparison seemed to hit Kevin like a physical blow. He sank into a chair as if his legs would not hold him anymore, pressing both hands against the table for support. Why? The word came out raw, wounded. Why did you not tell me? 2 years, Stephanie. 2 years. Do you really want to have that conversation now? Stephanie's voice carried an edge sharp enough to cut. Here, in front of them. Because I can give you the full answer, Kevin. But it is not going to be pleasant, and they are sitting right there listening to every word. She was right, and they both knew it. Emma was watching the exchange with wide, curious eyes, while Noah had abandoned his snack organization to study his father with unsettling intensity. No, Kevin said quietly, visibly struggling for composure. You are right. Not here. He looked at the twins again, and Stephanie watched something shift in his expression. The shock was still there, but beneath it was emerging something else. Wonder, grief, a desperate, hungry attention that he was directing at 2 children he had not known existed until 5 minutes ago. What are their names? He asked, even though she had already told him. As if he needed to hear it again. As if the names would make them more real. The girl is Emma. The boy is Noah. Hi, Emma offered brightly, apparently deciding that introductions were appropriate. I am Emma. I am 2 years old. This is my brother Noah. He does not talk much. I talk, Noah countered, his first words since entering the room. I just only talk when I have something important to say. Kevin made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. He looked at Stephanie with eyes that had gone glassy with unshed tears. They are perfect, he whispered. They are absolutely perfect. Yes, Stephanie agreed. They are, which is exactly why I kept them away from you for 2 years, because I needed to make sure they stayed that way. The words hung in the air like an indictment, which was precisely what they were. Kevin absorbed them with visible pain, his composure cracking in ways that Stephanie had never seen from the man she had known 2 years ago. I deserve that, he said. I deserve much worse than that. Agreed, but we are not here to discuss what you deserve. We are here because circumstances have changed, and you have a right to know your children exist. Whether you have a right to be in their lives is something we will determine based on actions, not words. What circumstances changed? Kevin asked carefully, seeming grateful for the pivot to practical matters. Stephanie pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. This. Kevin opened it to find documentation of the Mitchell lawsuit, the intellectual property allegations, the evidence connecting Peterson Technologies' product to Crumble Innovations' patented software. His face went very still as he reviewed the materials. You think we stole your work? I think someone did. Whether it was you personally, or someone who had access to your files, or someone who overheard details they should not have had access to, I do not know. But the Mitchell lawsuit is alleging a pattern, and my testimony could either support that pattern or contradict it. She leaned forward slightly, making sure he understood the stakes. I am here to give you a choice, Kevin. You can be the billionaire who did not know what his company was doing. Tragic, but understandable. Or you can be the billionaire who stole his pregnant girlfriend's work after she left him. Which story would you prefer the world to believe? The manipulation was elegant, and they both knew it. Stephanie was offering him an exit dressed up as an opportunity for accountability. But before Kevin could respond, Emma's voice cut through the tension. Mama, why do you sound angry? Stephanie closed her eyes briefly, cursing herself. She had promised herself she would not do this, would not let old bitterness poison the air around her children. I am not angry, baby. I am just having an important conversation with Mr. Peterson. You called him Kevin before. Emma pointed out with the devastating logic of a 2-year-old. And you said he was our daddy. Is he nice? Stephanie found herself at a loss for words. I do not know yet, Emma. We are finding out. Emma turned to look at Kevin with an assessing gaze that seemed far too mature for her age. Are you nice? She asked him directly. Kevin seemed to struggle for an answer that would be both honest and appropriate. I try to be. I have not always succeeded, but I am trying to be better. Emma considered this for a long moment. Then she nodded with the decisive air of someone who had reached a verdict. Okay, she said, you can be our daddy, but you have to be nice to Mama. She works very hard and she gets tired sometimes and she deserves nice people. The casual terms of acceptance, delivered with the gravity of a royal decree, hit Kevin like a wave. He looked at Stephanie and something passed between them that neither could name. I will try, Kevin said, his voice rough with emotion. I will try very hard. Now, before we continue with this conversation that is about to reshape 3 lives forever, I need to pause and speak directly to you. When I started Mr. Dawson's Stories, I wanted to create a space where we could explore the messy, complicated reality of love and forgiveness and second chances. Not fairy tales, but real stories about real people navigating impossible situations. You are here because something about Stephanie and Kevin's journey resonates with you. Maybe you have been betrayed. Maybe you have been the one who made the mistake. Maybe you are just trying to figure out if broken things can ever truly be fixed. If this story is speaking to you, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that strength can come from devastation, that our worst moments do not have to define our entire story. Subscribe if you have not already, because this is just the beginning. And trust me, you will not want to miss what happens next. Now, back to that conference room in San Francisco, where 2 people with 2 years of history are trying to navigate the impossible in front of 2 children who deserve better than excuses. You said circumstances changed, Kevin said, clearly trying to steer the conversation back to territory he could control. The lawsuit. Tell me exactly what you are alleging. Stephanie pulled out her tablet and displayed a side-by-side comparison of code architecture. This is the software I developed, the prototype I showed you that night in your apartment 3 years ago. And this, she swiped to a new screen. This is the code underlying the productivity suite Peterson Technologies launched 18 months ago. Kevin studied the comparison with the focused attention of someone who understood exactly what he was looking at. His jaw tightened as the similarities became undeniable. This is not coincidence, he said quietly. No, it is not. I did not authorize this. I did not know about this. Maybe not. Stephanie kept her voice neutral. But it happened under your leadership, in your company, using ideas I shared with you in confidence. Ideas I trusted you with. Kevin was silent for a long moment, his expression cycling through emotions too complex to name. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with something that sounded like genuine shame. After you left, he began slowly. I was not handling it well. I threw myself into work even more than usual. I stopped sleeping. I stopped caring about anything except the next deal, the next acquisition, the next distraction from the fact that I had let you walk away. That is not an explanation for intellectual property theft. No, Kevin agreed. But it is context for what happened next. I was having dinner with my CTO about a month after you left. I had been drinking. Too much. And I started talking about you, about your work, about the brilliant ideas you had, and how stupid I had been to let you go. Stephanie felt ice forming in her stomach. You told him about my prototype. I did not give him specifications. I did not hand over files. But Kevin closed his eyes. I described the concept, in detail, because I was grieving and drunk, and I wanted someone to understand what I had lost. And 3 months later, your engineering team submitted a new development that looked remarkably familiar. Yes, Kevin opened his eyes and met her gaze directly. I should have recognized it. I should have connected the dots. But I was drowning in other crises, and I was not paying attention. And by the time the product launched, you had built something using my stolen work. And you have been profiting from it ever since. Yes, the admission hung between them. Stephanie had expected denials, deflection, the army of lawyers that companies like Peterson Technologies deployed to bury inconvenient truths. She had not expected this. Honesty, accountability, the willingness to admit fault without excuse. I am going to settle the Mitchell lawsuit, Kevin said. I am going to issue a public statement acknowledging that certain Peterson Technologies innovations were improperly attributed. Your name will be included, and you will receive full compensation for the licensing of your intellectual property. Stephanie stared at him. You could fight this for years. You have the resources. I could. Kevin's eyes moved to the twins, who had grown bored with adult conversation and were now playing quietly with toys from Emma's bag. But I am tired of building things on foundations that are not solid. I am tired of being the kind of man who lets wrong things stand because fixing them is expensive. He looked back at Stephanie, and she saw something in his expression she had never seen before. Not the charm he used as a weapon, or the professional polish he wore like armor. Something raw, something real. I want my children to grow up knowing their father as someone who did the right thing even when it was costly. That starts here. That starts now. Pretty words, Stephanie heard herself say, though her voice lacked the sharpness it had carried earlier. But I have heard your pretty words before, Kevin. They did not mean much when you were too busy for dinner. They did not mean much when you missed my launch party. They did not mean much when I waited 45 minutes in your lobby for a conversation that never happened. I know. Kevin did not try to defend himself. I know I have no credibility with you. I know sorry does not begin to cover what I did. But Stephanie, I am not asking you to forgive me. I am not asking for another chance with you. I am just asking for the opportunity to know my children, to be part of their lives, to prove through actions, not words, that I can be different than I was. And if I say no, then I will accept that. Kevin's voice was steady, but she could see the effort it cost him. Because you are their mother. You have been their only parent for 2 years. You have earned the right to make that call. I have not earned anything. Mama. Noah's voice interrupted the conversation. He was holding up a blue crayon with an expression of deep seriousness. This is the best blue. I want to show Daddy. The casual use of the word Daddy hit Stephanie like a punch to the chest. She looked at her son, who was watching her with Kevin's analytical eyes, waiting for permission to share something important with this new person in his life. And in that moment, all her carefully constructed arguments about protection and precedent and earned trust seemed to crumble against a simpler truth. Her children wanted to know their father. And maybe, just maybe, that was a desire worth honoring. Go ahead, baby, she said softly. Show him your blue. Noah walked over to Kevin with the solemnity of someone conducting important business. He held up the crayon for inspection. See, this is cerulean. It is better than regular blue. Regular blue is boring. Kevin examined the crayon with matching seriousness. You are absolutely right. Cerulean is far superior. Do you know what color the sky is at dawn, when the sun is just starting to come up? Noah shook his head. It is almost exactly this color. Kevin said, You have very good taste in blues. The smile that spread across Noah's face was like watching the sun emerge from behind clouds. He looked back at Stephanie with an expression of vindication. See, Mama, he knows about colors. Yes, Stephanie managed to say around the tightness in her throat. It seems he does. Emma, not to be outdone, abandoned her toys and approached Kevin with her own offering. A drawing she had been working on, featuring what appeared to be a purple dragon breathing fire over a castle. I made this, she announced. It is a dragon. Her name is Queenie and she protects people from bad guys. She is magnificent, Kevin said, studying the drawing with genuine attention. Purple is an excellent color for a dragon. It suggests royalty and mystery. That is what I said. Emma shot Noah a triumphant look. He said, dragons cannot be purple, but I said they can be whatever color I want because I am the artist. You are absolutely correct, Kevin replied. Art does not follow rules. Art makes its own rules. Watching Kevin interact with the twins, seeing the way he got down to their level both physically and conversationally, Stephanie felt something shift in her chest. This was not the Kevin she had known 2 years ago. That Kevin would have delegated childcare to an assistant, scheduled bonding time between meetings, treated parenthood as another item on his to-do list. This Kevin was present in a way she had never witnessed. Focused entirely on 2 small humans who had no idea how powerful their father was and did not care. They cared about crayons and dragons and whether he would take their contributions seriously. And he was. He genuinely was. We need to establish ground rules, Stephanie said finally, pulling the conversation back to practical matters even as her heart continued its complicated recalibration. If you want to be involved in their lives, it has to be genuine and consistent. Not weekend visits when you are not too busy. Not gifts instead of presents. Real engagement. Agreed, Kevin said immediately. Whatever it takes. I am not moving back to San Francisco. Seattle is our home. The twins have friends, routines, a life I have built for them. If you want to be part of that life, you will need to come to us. I can do that. I will come every weekend. More often if you will allow it. We will start with twice a month. Stephanie countered. Let them get used to the idea gradually rather than overwhelming them. You can call them weekly. Video chat if they are comfortable. But Kevin, if you commit to this, you commit completely. You do not get to decide 6 months from now that fatherhood is inconvenient. You do not get to let them down the way you let me down. I will not, he promised, and something in his voice suggested he actually meant it. I want this. I want to know them. I want to be better than I was. Wanting is not enough. Doing is what matters. Show up consistently, even when it is hard, even when work is demanding, even when it would be easier to send a gift instead of making the trip. Show up anyway. Kevin nodded slowly, accepting every condition without argument. They spent the next hour ironing out logistics, background checks and legal documentation, custody arrangements that protected Stephanie's primary parental rights while allowing Kevin supervised visitation, financial agreements that acknowledged his obligations while making clear she did not need his money. Every detail negotiated carefully, building a framework that would allow him into their lives without risking the stability she had fought so hard to create. Through it all, the twins remained mostly focused on their activities, occasionally interrupting with questions or observations that cut through the adult complexity with childlike directness. By the time they finished, 2.5 hours had passed and Emma was getting restless. Mama, she announced, I am hungry. Can we get pizza? In a few minutes, baby. We are almost done. Can he come? Emma pointed at Kevin. If he is our daddy, should he not eat with us? Stephanie had not anticipated extending the meeting into a family dinner, but the twins were looking at her with identical hopeful expressions that were nearly impossible to refuse. If he wants to, she said carefully, leaving the choice to Kevin while making clear she was not eager for the extension. I would love to, Kevin said immediately, if that is okay with everyone. Pizza has to be pepperoni. Noah stipulated, not just cheese. Cheese pizza is boring. I like plain cheese. Emma countered. You like everything plain. Noah shot back. That is just how you are. Children. Stephanie intervened gently. We can get half and half. Problem solved. They ended up at a small Italian restaurant 6 blocks from Peterson Technologies, the kind of family place that Kevin almost certainly never frequented, with red vinyl booths and paper placemats for coloring and a noise level that suggested children were welcome rather than tolerated. Kevin looked out of place in his expensive suit, but he slid into the booth across from Stephanie without complaint, watching the twins settle into their seats with an expression of wondering attention. This is nice, he said, and sounded like he meant it. It is pizza, Stephanie replied, not a Michelin star experience. That is why it is nice. His eyes moved around the restaurant, taking in the families, the noise, the beautiful chaos of ordinary life. Normal, real. I have spent 2 years eating alone in restaurants that were too quiet and too expensive and too empty. This is better. The food arrived, and they ate with the kind of awkward small talk that happens when 2 people with complicated history try to navigate new territory. The twins helped, chattering about their lives in Seattle, their friends at daycare, the elaborate fantasy world they had constructed together involving dragons and castles and a complex political system that Emma had apparently invented. Noah wants to be a builder when he grows up, Emma explained through a mouthful of pizza. He is always stacking things and making towers. Is that true? Kevin asked Noah directly. Maybe. Noah allowed. I like how things fit together, how you can take small pieces and make them into something big that does not fall down. Engineering, Kevin said. I studied some engineering in college before switching to computer science. The physics of how structures support themselves, how weight gets distributed, how you can build something that will last. Noah's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm reserved for finding someone who spoke your language. Do you know about bridges? How they hold up cars even though they are just over water? I do. Some of the most beautiful engineering in the world goes into bridges. The Golden Gate Bridge, right here in San Francisco. Have you seen it? From the airplane, Noah said. But Mama said maybe we can go closer. Kevin looked at Stephanie with a question in his eyes. Would that be acceptable? Tomorrow, before you fly back, we could see the bridge. Stephanie hesitated. She had planned to maintain strict boundaries, to control these first encounters carefully. But Noah was looking at her with such desperate hope that refusing felt cruel. If we have time, she said. And if everyone behaves, I always behave, Emma declared with the confidence of someone who had never met herself during a tantrum. The laughter that escaped Stephanie surprised her. She had not laughed genuinely in Kevin's presence in over 2 years. But watching Emma's outraged dignity at the implied insult, seeing Noah roll his eyes at his sister's self-assessment, feeling the strange normalcy of a family dinner that was not quite a family, something in her began to unclench. Maybe this could work. Maybe, with enough time and enough boundaries and enough evidence of genuine change, she could let Kevin into their lives without destroying everything she had built. It was a dangerous thought, a hopeful thought, the kind of thought she had trained herself to suppress. But sitting in that vinyl booth, watching her children show their father how to fold a napkin into a hat, Stephanie let herself hold the thought for just a moment before putting it away. Time would tell. It always did. After dinner, they walked back toward Peterson Technologies, where Stephanie had left her rental car. The rain had stopped, leaving San Francisco gleaming and clean in the evening light. The twins walked between their parents, Emma holding Kevin's hand without being asked, Noah maintaining his independence by touching no one but staying close. When will we see you again? Emma asked Kevin as they approached the parking garage. 2 weeks. Kevin glanced at Stephanie for confirmation. When she nodded, he continued, I will come to Seattle. We can do something fun together. Whatever you want. Can we go to the zoo? Emma asked immediately. They have elephants. Can we see the bridge first? Noah countered. You promised bridges. We can do both. Kevin said, Zoo and bridges. It is a full day. The twins seemed satisfied with this plan. They said goodbye without drama, already processing this new person in their lives with the remarkable adaptability of children who had been raised to handle complexity. But before Stephanie could usher them into the car, Kevin touched her elbow gently. Can I have a moment? Just us. Stephanie hesitated, then nodded. Get in the car and buckle up, she told the twins. I will be right there. Once they were out of earshot, Kevin seemed to struggle for words. Unusual for a man who had built an empire on the power of persuasion. Thank you, he finally said, for this, for telling me, for giving me a chance I know I do not deserve. Do not thank me yet, Stephanie replied. This is not about redemption. This is about 2 children who deserve to know their father. If you mess this up, if you let them down the way you let me down, you will never get another opportunity. I will make sure of it. I will not. I promise. You promised me things before. Your promises did not mean much then. She watched him flinch at the words. Good. She wanted him to understand the stakes, to feel the weight of what he was taking on. I know, Kevin said quietly. I know I destroyed your trust. I know that sorry does not begin to cover what I did. But Stephanie, I am not asking you to forgive me or give me another chance with us. I am just asking for the opportunity to be their father. I will prove myself through actions, not words. See that you do. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Is there anyone in your life I need to know about? Anyone who might have opinions about suddenly having 2 toddlers in the picture? No, Kevin said immediately. There is no one. Has not been anyone serious since you. I do not care about your dating history. I just need to know there will not be complications, drama, anyone who might create problems for the twins. There will not be. I promise you that. Stephanie nodded once, then walked to her car without looking back. As she pulled out of the parking garage, she saw Kevin still standing there, watching them leave, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Mama. Emma's voice came from the back seat. Is he nice? Really nice? I do not know yet. Stephanie answered honestly. What do you think? I think he seems sad, Emma said thoughtfully. Like he lost something important. He did, Noah added with the certainty of someone stating obvious facts. He lost us for 2 years. That is a lot of losing. Out of the mouths of children, Stephanie thought. Sometimes they saw more clearly than adults ever could. The flight back to Seattle felt longer than usual. The twins eventually fell asleep, and Stephanie stared out the window at darkness, interrupted occasionally by city lights below. She had done it. She had told Kevin about the children. She had navigated the first meeting. She had established boundaries that would protect everyone involved. She should feel relieved, accomplished, satisfied that she had handled a difficult situation with grace and strength. Instead, she felt exhausted. And if she was being completely honest with herself, which she tried to avoid after difficult days, she felt the faint stirring of something that might have been hope. Not for herself. She had sealed that door 2 years ago and thrown away the key. But hope that maybe, possibly, her children could have a father who showed up and stayed, who proved that people could change, who learned from mistakes and became better. She would believe it when she saw it. Until then, the walls stayed up, the boundaries remained firm, and she would continue being exactly what she had learned to be. Complete unto herself, needing no one, surviving everything. They landed in Seattle just before midnight. Miranda met them at the airport, her familiar presence a comfort after the emotional intensity of San Francisco. "How did it go?" Miranda asked once the twins were settled in the car, too sleepy to pay attention to adult conversation. "Complicated," Stephanie replied. "He wants to be involved, says he has changed. We will see if his actions match his words." "And how do you feel about that?" "I do not feel anything about it," Stephanie said firmly. "This is not about me. It is about them. My feelings are irrelevant." Miranda gave her a look that suggested she did not believe that for a second, but wisely said nothing. At home, Stephanie carried both twins to bed, still small enough to carry though, not for much longer. She tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, and stood in their doorway for a moment watching them sleep. These two humans she had built and raised, who somehow combined the best parts of her and Kevin while being entirely their own people. They deserved a father. They deserved to know where they came from, to have access to that part of their identity, even if it meant Stephanie had to face Kevin regularly, had to keep old wounds from reopening, had to maintain professional civility with the man who had shattered her heart so completely she had spent 2 years certain she would never let anyone close again. She could do it. She had survived harder things. Later, in her own room, Stephanie pulled out her phone, found a text from Kevin waiting. "Thank you again for today. I meant everything I said. I will prove it. Sleep well." She stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. "Actions, not words. See you in 2 weeks. Short, professional, giving nothing away. Exactly as it should be." She set her phone down and tried to sleep, but her mind kept replaying moments from the day. The shock on Kevin's face when he saw the twins, the careful way he had spoken to them, finding common ground with Noah about colors and bridges, making Emma feel seen when she showed him her dragon, the genuine emotion in his voice when he had promised to do better, and underneath it all, the painful awareness that this was the Kevin she had fallen in love with 3 years ago. Attentive, intelligent, capable of real connection, the man she had thought she would spend her life with before his ambition had consumed everything else. But that was ancient history. What mattered now was the future. Specifically, whether Kevin could sustain his commitment, or whether this was just another emotional impulse that would fade when faced with the boring reality of actual parenting. Time would tell. It always did. Stephanie finally fell asleep around 2 in the morning, exhausted from travel and emotional labor. She dreamed of dragons and bridges, of children building kingdoms where broken things could be made whole again if you just had the right blueprint and enough patience to do the work. The question was whether Kevin Peterson had that patience. The question was whether she could survive finding out. The next 2 weeks passed in the familiar rhythm of single parenthood. School runs and business calls, bedtime stories and investor meetings, the ordinary routine that had become Stephanie's life, the structure she had built to survive and eventually thrive. But now there was something new threading through that routine, something that made her pulse quicken every time her phone buzzed, something that made the twins ask questions she was not sure how to answer. "Daddy is going to call tonight, right, Mama?" Emma asked every evening around 6 o'clock, which had somehow become the established time for video calls. If he said he would call, then he will call. Stephanie always replied, carefully neutral, not wanting to build expectations she was not certain would be met. But Kevin called, every single time, without fail, without excuses, without the last-minute cancellations that had characterized their relationship 2 years ago. The first call had been awkward, everyone trying too hard, conversations stilted, the twins suddenly shy in the presence of this screen-based father they were still learning to trust. Kevin had asked questions that were too formal. The twins had given answers that were too short. Stephanie had hovered in the background, monitoring every word, ready to end the call at the first sign of trouble. But by the third call, something had shifted. Noah had started bringing his drawings to the screen, elaborate architectural designs he wanted to show Kevin. Buildings with impossible angles, bridges that defied physics, structures that existed only in the imagination of a 2-year-old who saw the world as something to be built and rebuilt. "This one is a house for dragons," Noah explained during the fourth call, holding up a drawing covered in what appeared to be purple crayon and ambition. "It has to be very tall because dragons are big, and it needs special doors because they breathe fire." Kevin studied the drawing with genuine attention. "What about ventilation?" he asked seriously. "If dragons breathe fire inside, you need a way for the smoke to escape. Otherwise, the whole structure fills with smoke and nobody can see." Noah's eyes went wide. He had not considered this. He grabbed the drawing back and began adding what appeared to be chimneys to every available surface. "Good thinking, Daddy," he said absently, already absorbed in his modifications. The casual use of Daddy, dropped without ceremony or self-consciousness, made Stephanie's chest tighten. She watched from the kitchen doorway as her son continued his engineering consultation with a man he had known for less than 2 weeks, and she felt the familiar war between hope and fear that had become her constant companion. Emma, not to be outdone, had developed her own call rituals. She insisted on singing Kevin the songs she had learned at daycare, performing elaborate dances that could only be partially captured by the tablet camera, and providing detailed reports on the social dynamics of her toddler friend group. "Lily was mean to Marcus today," Emma reported during the 5th call, her expression grave. "She would not share the red crayon and made him cry. I told her that was not nice, and she said I was not the boss of her, but I said no, but being mean is wrong, and then she shared the crayon." "You handled that very well," Kevin said. "Standing up for someone when they are being treated unfairly is one of the most important things a person can do. That is what Mama says too." Emma nodded with satisfaction. "Mama says we have to be brave for people who cannot be brave for themselves." "Your mama is very wise." "I know." Emma agreed without false modesty. "She is the smartest person I know. Except maybe you, because you know about dragons and ventilation." Stephanie had to turn away from that conversation, pressing her hand against her mouth to contain whatever sound was trying to escape. She was not sure if it was a laugh or a sob or something in between. Miranda found her in the kitchen a few minutes later, still standing with her back to the living room where the call was continuing. "You okay?" Miranda asked quietly. "Fine," Stephanie said automatically. "Just fine." That is not what fine looks like. Stephanie finally turned around, and Miranda saw the tears she was trying to hide. "He is actually showing up," Stephanie whispered. "Every single time, early to every call, fully present, asking follow-up questions about things they told him 3 calls ago, remembering details, treating them like they matter. And that scares you more than if he had failed." Yes, the admission felt like a confession. If he had failed, I would know what to do. I have practiced that response for 2 years. I have prepared for disappointment. But Miranda, what do I do if he is actually changing? What do I do if the man I needed him to be 2 years ago is finally showing up now that it is too late? "Is it too late?" Miranda asked gently. Stephanie did not have an answer. 2 weeks after that first meeting in San Francisco, Kevin arrived in Seattle on a Friday afternoon. Stephanie had agreed to let him take the twins to the zoo as promised, but she would be accompanying them. No unsupervised visits yet. Trust had to be earned in increments, not granted wholesale because of biology or pretty promises. He texted when he landed. He texted when he checked into his hotel. He texted when he was on his way to her house. The constant updates felt like someone proving they understood accountability, and Stephanie appreciated it, even as she refused to acknowledge the appreciation. When the doorbell rang, both twins raced to answer it, their excitement almost too big for their small bodies to contain. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," Emma chanted as she ran. "He came, he came, he came." Stephanie followed at a more measured pace, arriving in time to see Kevin crouching down to the twins' level, a wrapped package in each hand. "I brought you something," he said. "But I want to be clear. I am not trying to buy your affection. Your mom and I agreed that gifts should be meaningful, not excessive. So these are small, but I thought you might like them." He handed Noah a package that turned out to be a book about famous bridges throughout history, filled with photographs and diagrams that made Noah's eyes go wide with wonder. Emma's package contained a sketchbook with a purple dragon embossed on the cover and a set of artist-quality crayons in every shade of purple imaginable. "These are perfect," Noah said, already flipping through the bridge book. "Look, Emma, the Golden Gate Bridge. We are going to see that one." "I love it," Emma declared, hugging her sketchbook to her chest. "Thank you, Daddy." "You are welcome," Kevin replied, then stood and met Stephanie's eyes. "Hi." "Hi," she echoed, suddenly aware that she had not figured out how to greet him. A handshake felt too formal. A hug was absolutely out of the question. She settled for a brief nod. Ready for a full day of zoo animals and toddler chaos? Absolutely. He was wearing jeans and a casual button-down, the most relaxed Stephanie had ever seen him dress. "I cleared my entire schedule. No calls, no emails, no distractions. Today is entirely about them." Another point in his favor, though Stephanie kept her expression carefully neutral. "Let us go then." The zoo was crowded with families enjoying the weekend. Emma led the charge, dragging Kevin toward the elephant exhibit with the determination of a tiny general commanding troops. Noah followed at a more measured pace, stopping frequently to examine structural elements of the zoo buildings themselves. "That pillar is load-bearing," he observed, pointing at a concrete support near the primate house. "If you took it away, the whole roof would fall down." "You are absolutely right." Kevin crouched beside him to examine the architecture. "Do you see how it connects to the beam up there? That distributes the weight across the whole structure instead of concentrating it in one spot. Like a bridge," Noah said, making connections. "Exactly like a bridge. Same engineering principles, different application." Stephanie walked behind them, watching this interaction with complicated feelings she could not quite name. Kevin was so present with Noah, so genuinely engaged with his interests. This was not performance. This was not what showing up for an obligation looked like. This looked like a father discovering his son. At the elephant exhibit, Emma stood transfixed by the massive animals moving slowly behind the barriers. "They are so big," she whispered, genuine awe in her voice. "How do they get so big?" "They eat a lot," Kevin said, reading the informational plaque. "About 300 pounds of food every day." 300 pounds. Emma tried to imagine this quantity and failed. "That is more than me. Much more than you," Kevin agreed seriously. "You probably eat about 3 pounds of food a day. So an elephant eats as much as 100 Emmas. 100 Emmas. Emma considered this with the expression of someone doing important mathematics. "That is a lot of Emmas. It is a lot of Emmas," Kevin confirmed. "Want to see the giraffes next. They are also very big, but they eat leaves instead of—" He checked the plaque again. "Grass and bark and various vegetation." "Yes, please." The afternoon unfolded in a way that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar. Foreign because Stephanie had never navigated a family outing with Kevin, had never watched him carry Emma on his shoulders when her small legs got tired, had never seen him patiently answer Noah's endless questions about how things worked. Familiar because this was what she had imagined their life could be. 3 years ago, when she had still believed in fairy tales, she had pictured moments exactly like this. Family outings, shared experiences, building memories together. She had just never expected it to happen after everything had already fallen apart. They stopped for ice cream in the late afternoon, despite the cool Seattle weather. The twins were exhausted but happy, their faces sticky with chocolate and vanilla, their chatter a constant backdrop of observations and questions and the particular nonsense that tired toddlers produce. "This has been the best day," Emma announced, chocolate ice cream dripping down her chin. "Can we do this every day?" "Not every day," Stephanie said gently. "Daddy has to go back to San Francisco tonight, but he will visit again soon." 2 weeks. Kevin confirmed, "And I will call you both this week. Every day if you want. Every day." Emma agreed immediately. "I have a lot of things to tell you. I want to hear all of them." Noah, quieter than his sister but no less affected by the day, looked up from his ice cream with an expression of careful consideration. "You are good at explaining things," he said to Kevin. "How things work. Most grown-ups do not know how things work, or they do not want to explain." "I like explaining things," Kevin replied. "And I like that you want to understand. Never stop asking questions, Noah. That is how you learn. Mama says that too. Your mama is right about most things." Kevin's eyes met Stephanie's briefly before returning to his son. "She is very smart." "I know," Noah said, matter-of-factly. "That is why we live with her. The walk back to Stephanie's car was quiet, the twins worn out from their adventure. Emma fell asleep on Kevin's shoulder before they reached the parking lot, and Noah was fighting his own exhaustion with the stubbornness of someone who did not want the day to end. At the car, Kevin transferred a sleeping Emma to her car seat with surprising gentleness, buckling her in without waking her. Noah climbed into his own seat and was unconscious within seconds of the buckle clicking. "They are amazing," Kevin said softly, standing beside Stephanie in the parking lot, both of them looking at their sleeping children through the car windows. "You did an incredible job with them." Stephanie corrected automatically, then caught herself. I did the work. You were not there." "No." Kevin agreed without defensiveness. "I was not, but what I meant was, they are good people, kind and curious and brave. That does not happen by accident. That comes from being raised well. You gave them that." Stephanie did not know how to respond. She had grown so accustomed to defending herself, to justifying her choices, to preparing for attacks that never came. Kevin's simple acknowledgement of her motherhood caught her off guard. "Thank you," she finally managed. "For today, they had a good time. So did I." Kevin's voice carried a weight that went beyond a simple outing. "The best time I have had in, I do not actually know how long. Years, probably. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Do not thank me yet." Stephanie opened her car door, signaling the end of the conversation. This was one day, one good day. There will be hard days too. Days when they are sick and cranky and impossible. Days when being a parent is nothing but exhaustion and mess and doing the same things over and over without any acknowledgement. "I know," Kevin said, "and I want to be there for those days too. Not just the zoo trips. All of it. We will see." She drove away without looking back, but she watched him in the rearview mirror for longer than she should have, standing alone in the parking lot, watching them leave, looking smaller somehow than the billionaire who had stood silhouetted against windows in a San Francisco conference room just 2 weeks ago. That night, after the twins were bathed and fed and finally asleep after their exciting day, Stephanie sat in her kitchen with Miranda and tried to process what she was feeling. "He was good with them," Stephanie said, staring into a cup of tea that had gone cold. "Really good. Not faking it, not performing for an audience, actually present in a way I have never seen from him. And that is terrifying. Why does everyone keep saying that?" Stephanie snapped, then immediately apologized. "Sorry, why is it terrifying to see something good happening? Because you built your whole life around protecting yourself and those kids from disappointment," Miranda said gently. "And now you have to consider the possibility that the disappointment might not come, that he might actually show up, that you might have to let go of some of that control you fought so hard to maintain. I do not want to let go of control, I know, but at some point, you might have to decide what is more important, controlling everything, or letting your children have a father who wants to be there. What if he changes his mind? What if he does this for 6 months and then gets bored and disappears? What if the twins get attached and then he abandons them the way he abandoned me? Then you will deal with it." Miranda reached across the table to take Stephanie's hand. "You will deal with it the same way you have dealt with everything else, by being strong and resilient and doing whatever needs to be done. But Stephanie, you cannot protect them from all possible pain by denying them all possible joy. That is not protection. That is just a different kind of prison." The weeks that followed became a strange new rhythm. Kevin visited Seattle every 2 weeks, exactly as promised. Video calls continued every evening at 6, exactly as scheduled. The twins began to expect his presence in their lives, began to count down the days until his next visit, began to talk about Daddy with the casual frequency of children who trusted someone would actually show up. And Kevin showed up, every single time. He came to Noah's toddler music class and sat on the floor with the other parents, shaking a tambourine without a trace of self-consciousness. He attended Emma's dance recital and cheered so loudly, she laughed and broke character in the middle of her performance. He learned the twins' routines, their preferences, the specific foods Noah would eat, and the specific foods that would trigger Emma's gag reflex. He learned that Noah needed his blanket arranged in a particular way at nap time, or he would not sleep. He learned that Emma required exactly 2 stories before bed, never 1, never 3, and that the second story had to be made up on the spot about purple dragons. He learned that both twins were afraid of loud noises but would not admit it, and that the best way to handle their fear was to pretend he was also scared so they could be brave together. He was becoming a father, actually becoming one, not just claiming the title. And Stephanie, watching it all unfold, found herself in territory she had never expected to navigate. One evening, 3 months after that first meeting in San Francisco, Kevin made an announcement during dinner at Stephanie's house. It had become routine, these dinners on his visit weekends. Kevin cooking something that usually came out slightly wrong while Stephanie supervised homework, and everyone pretended this was a completely normal situation. "I have some news," Kevin said as they sat down to eat pasta that was slightly overcooked but made with genuine effort. "I have been restructuring things at Peterson Technologies, delegating more responsibility to my executive team." "What does that mean?" Stephanie asked carefully. "It means I have opened a Seattle office." Kevin's voice was measured, but she could see the hope he was trying to contain. "Small for now, just a satellite location, but it means I can spend more time here. 3 weeks out of every month instead of just weekends." The twins erupted into cheers. Stephanie felt her heart rate spike, though she could not tell if it was excitement or panic or some complicated mixture of both. "That is a big change," she said, proud of how steady her voice remained. "It is the right change." Kevin's eyes met hers across the table. "My company can function without me micromanaging every decision. I have spent the past 3 months proving that to myself." But Emma and Noah, he looked at their children who were practically vibrating with excitement. "They are only little once. I have already missed 2 years. I do not want to miss any more." "What about your life in San Francisco?" Stephanie asked. "Your friends, your routine, everything you built there." "I did not have much of a life in San Francisco," Kevin admitted. "Just work. The few friends I had were really business associates who have mostly fallen away since I started prioritizing being here. There is nothing tying me to San Francisco except habit. Here, I have my children. That is everything." It was exactly the right answer, exactly what Stephanie had hoped to hear, and it terrified her completely. Because if Kevin relocated to Seattle, if he became a permanent fixture in their daily lives, the careful distance she had maintained would become impossible. She would have to actually deal with her feelings instead of compartmentalizing them into manageable visits. "When would this happen?" she asked, stalling. "I'm looking at properties now, hoping to be settled within 2 months. I wanted to tell you first, make sure it was okay. You do not need my permission to move to Seattle," Stephanie pointed out. "It is a free country." "No, but I need you to be comfortable with it." Kevin's voice was gentle but serious. "If this is too much too fast, I can slow down the timeline. Your comfort matters to me. The twins' stability matters to me. I am not trying to overwhelm anyone." Stephanie looked at Emma and Noah, who were watching this exchange with barely contained excitement. She looked at Kevin, who had spent 3 months proving himself consistent and reliable. She looked at the life she had built, which suddenly felt less like protection and more like limitation. "Do it," she heard herself say. "Move here. Be close to them. They deserve that." What she did not say, what she barely admitted to herself, was that maybe she deserved it too. Maybe she deserved to see what happened when someone who had hurt her actually did the work to become better. Maybe she deserved the possibility of something more than just surviving. That night, after Kevin left and the twins were asleep, Stephanie stood in her kitchen drinking tea and staring at nothing. Miranda found her there 20 minutes later, still holding the same cup, lost in thought. "You are thinking very loudly," Miranda observed, pouring herself tea and settling at the table. "Want to share, or should I just guess?" "He is moving here," Stephanie said. "Opening a Seattle office. He will be here 3 weeks out of every month. And how do you feel about that?" "I do not know." Stephanie finally sat down across from Miranda, terrified, hopeful, both at the same time. "He has been everything I hoped he would be as a father. Consistent, present, genuinely engaged. The twins adore him. But it means I cannot keep him at arm's length anymore. I cannot pretend this is just co-parenting when he is going to be a permanent fixture in our daily lives. I am going to have to actually examine what I feel about him beyond whether he is good for the children." "And what do you feel about him?" Miranda asked gently. Stephanie was quiet for a long moment, staring into her tea like it contained answers. "I do not hate him anymore," she finally said. "I did for a long time, but watching him with Emma and Noah, seeing how he has changed, how he prioritizes them over everything else, it is hard to maintain hatred in the face of genuine transformation." "That is not what I asked." "I know what you asked," Stephanie's voice cracked slightly. I'm just not ready to answer it honestly, because the answer scares you, because the answer means I might have to risk something I swore I would never risk again. My heart, my trust, my belief that people can choose me and stay chosen. He broke all of that 3 years ago. What if he breaks it again? What if he does not? Miranda countered. What if he has actually become the man you needed him to be back then? Are you going to punish him forever for who he was, or give him credit for who he has become? It was the question Stephanie had been avoiding for 3 months. She had been so focused on protecting herself and the twins that she had not considered what she might be protecting herself from. Not just pain, but possibility. I do not know if I can do it, Stephanie whispered. I do not know if I can be that vulnerable again. You do not have to decide tonight, Miranda said. But eventually you will have to decide something. Living in this limbo, not moving forward but not letting go, that is just another kind of prison. You survived what he did to you. You built an empire from nothing. You raised 2 incredible children alone. You are strong enough to risk your heart again, if you choose to. The question is whether you are brave enough. The words settled over Stephanie like a challenge. She had thought surviving was the brave part, but maybe staying safe was actually the coward's choice. Maybe real courage meant risking pain for the possibility of something better than mere survival. 6 weeks later, Kevin closed on a house in Stephanie's neighborhood, a beautiful craftsman-style home 3 miles from her place. He invited them over for a walkthrough before he moved in, wanting the twins to feel comfortable in what would become their second home. This will be your room when you stay over. Kevin showed Noah a bedroom with built-in bookshelves and a desk positioned to catch morning light. I thought you could use it for your building projects. Noah's eyes went wide. This is mine, really yours. We will decorate it however you want. Emma's room was painted lavender with space for her growing dragon collection and a window seat perfect for reading. I love it, she breathed. Can we stay tonight? Not tonight, Stephanie interjected gently. Your dad does not even have furniture yet. But soon, once he is settled. They explored the rest of the house. A home office where Kevin would work. A modern kitchen that opened to a backyard perfect for children. A living room with space for family movie nights. It was a home designed for the life Kevin was building, not the life he had had. After the twins ran outside to explore the yard, Stephanie and Kevin stood in the kitchen alone. The space between them felt charged with something neither was ready to name. This is really happening, Stephanie said. You are really here. In Seattle, building a life close to them. I told you I would. Kevin's voice was quiet but certain. I know it took months to prove it, but I meant every word. Before Stephanie could respond, before she could retreat behind her walls or deflect with practicality, something happened that changed everything. Her phone rang. The number was one she did not recognize, but something about the timing made her answer. Miss Campbell, a professional female voice. This is Vivian Cross. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at Peterson Technologies. I believe we need to talk about Kevin and this, she paused delicately, situation he has gotten himself into with you and those children. Stephanie felt ice form in her stomach. She stepped away from Kevin, lowering her voice. I am not sure what situation you are referring to. The situation where a woman from Kevin's past appears with convenient twins and suddenly he is restructuring his entire company, relocating to Seattle, making decisions that are costing shareholders millions. Vivian's voice was smooth and sharp at the same time. Some of us are concerned about his judgment, about whether he is being manipulated. I have never asked Kevin for anything. Of course you have not asked. Vivian laughed, a sound without warmth. That would be too obvious. You are much more sophisticated than that. Show up with adorable children, let him feel guilty about the time he missed. Watch him bend over backward to prove he has changed. It is really quite masterful manipulation. Kevin had noticed something was wrong. He was watching Stephanie with concern, moving closer. Who is this? He asked quietly. Stephanie held up a hand, signaling him to wait. Ms. Cross, she said into the phone, her voice cold. I do not know you. I do not care about your opinions, and I am certainly not going to justify my existence or my children's existence to someone who has clearly decided to be threatened by us. Do not call me again. She hung up before Vivian could respond. Who was that? Kevin demanded. What did they say? Someone named Vivian Cross. Stephanie watched Kevin's face carefully. She seemed to have some very strong opinions about me and the twins. The color drained from Kevin's face. Vivian called you directly. Apparently, she called us manipulators. Said you were making decisions that were costing shareholders. She had some theories about convenient children and sophisticated schemes. Kevin's expression shifted from shock to something that looked like barely controlled fury. She had no right, he said tightly. No right at all to contact you. I am going to. Going to what? Stephanie interrupted. Kevin, who is this woman? Why does she care so much about what you do with your personal life? Kevin was quiet for a long moment, visibly struggling with how much to say. Vivian has been with Peterson Technologies for 5 years. He finally said, she is ambitious, very good at her job. And she has. He hesitated. She has made it clear over the past year that she is interested in a relationship beyond professional. I have never encouraged her. I have never given her any indication that I was interested. But she has not accepted that as a final answer. So she is jealous. She is territorial. Kevin's voice was hard. She sees the company as her domain and me as part of that domain. The restructuring I have done, the time I spend here instead of San Francisco, it challenges her position. She does not like being challenged. And she decided to solve that problem by intimidating me. I will handle this. Kevin's jaw was tight. She will never contact you again. How will you handle it? By making very clear that interfering with my family is a termination-level offense. Your family. Stephanie felt something flutter in her chest at the word, even as she kept her expression neutral. My children. He caught himself. The people who matter to me. Vivian has no right to insert herself into that. None at all. The conversation was interrupted by the twins returning from the backyard, full of reports about the garden and the trees and the absolutely perfect spot for a tire swing. But the shadow of that phone call lingered, and Stephanie filed away the name Vivian Cross, filing it under problems I might have to deal with later. Now, Mr. Dawson's story's family, I need to pause here because this is one of those moments where the story takes a turn. Kevin has done everything right for 3 months. He has shown up. He has proven himself. He has moved his entire life to be closer to his children. And just when it seemed like this redemption story might actually work out, a new threat has entered the picture. Vivian Cross is not just a jealous colleague. She is someone who sees Stephanie and the twins as obstacles to be removed. And she has already shown she is willing to fight dirty. I want to know what you think is going to happen next. Drop a comment right now with your predictions. Is Vivian going to cause serious problems for this family? Is Kevin going to handle this the right way? Or is this the moment everything falls apart? While you are thinking about that, make sure you have hit that like button. If this story has you invested, if you are rooting for Stephanie and Kevin and those twins, show me with a like. Subscribe if you have not already, because trust me, you do not want to miss what comes next. Now, back to Seattle, where a storm is brewing that nobody saw coming. The first sign of trouble came 2 weeks later. Kevin was supposed to pick up the twins for their weekend together. He had planned a trip to the aquarium, something Noah had been requesting for weeks after learning that marine animals lived in structures designed by humans to simulate ocean environments. At 2 o'clock, the scheduled pickup time, Kevin was not there. By 2:30, Stephanie had texted twice with no response. By 3, she was calling, getting voicemail every time. By 3:30, Emma was crying, and Noah was asking questions Stephanie could not answer. Where is Daddy? Noah's voice was tight with controlled confusion. He always comes on time. He promised. I do not know, baby. Stephanie tried to keep her own rising panic out of her voice. But I am sure there is a good reason. Sometimes things happen that we do not expect, but he promised. Emma's face was wet with tears. He said the aquarium. He said today. He promised. Stephanie held both children, feeling the familiar armor of disappointment settling over her shoulders. She had known this would happen. She had known that eventually Kevin would revert to form, would choose something else over his children, would prove that all his transformation had been temporary, performative, a phase that would pass when something more interesting came along. She had just hoped it would take longer than 3 months. At 4 o'clock, her phone finally rang. Kevin, where are you? The twins have been. Stephanie. Kevin's voice sounded strange, tight and exhausted and wrong in ways she could not identify. Something happened, a crisis at the company. The Tokyo deal completely fell apart, and there was a board emergency, and He trailed off. Stephanie waited for the excuse, the explanation, the promise that it would never happen again. "I do not have an excuse," Kevin said finally. "I should have called. I should have texted. I should have handled the situation differently. Instead, I let Vivian tell me this emergency required my immediate attention, and I did not question why every single crisis seemed designed to happen at the exact moment I was supposed to be with the twins. Vivian. She orchestrated this." Kevin's voice was bitter. "The Tokyo deal was fine until she inserted herself into communications and created problems that did not exist. Then she made sure I was unreachable while solving problems she had manufactured. I just spent 3 hours figuring out what happened." "You are blaming her." Stephanie felt her own voice going flat. "That is convenient. I am not blaming her to excuse myself. I am telling you what happened, and I am telling you that I should have been smarter. I should have seen the pattern. I should have protected my time with the twins the way I protect important meetings. I failed at that today. That is on me." Emma cried. Stephanie said, "Noah is sitting in the corner building something with blocks and refusing to talk. They were excited about the aquarium. They were ready at 1:45 in their shoes and jackets. And they waited. Kevin, they waited for you." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy with shame. "Can I come now?" Kevin finally asked. "I know it is late. I know the aquarium is closed. But I could come. Be there. Try to what? Fix it. Explain to 2 toddlers why Daddy did not show up when he said he would. Tell them all about corporate sabotage and manufactured emergencies. Tell them I am sorry." Kevin's voice cracked. "And that it will not happen again. And that I love them. And that I am going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Words, Kevin. Pretty words. We have talked about this. You promised actions. And the first time something conflicts with the twins, you chose the something. I know. I will fix this. With them, with you, with the situation at the company. I will fix all of it. See that you do. Stephanie hung up without saying goodbye. That night, after the twins were finally asleep, exhausted from crying and disappointment, Stephanie sat in her kitchen and let herself feel the full weight of her own devastation. She had started to believe. That was the most painful part. She had started to think maybe, just maybe, Kevin Peterson had actually changed. That the months of consistency meant something permanent. That her children could have a father who showed up. And now here she was, cleaning up the emotional damage of broken promises. Again, Miranda arrived with wine and silence, knowing that sometimes presence was more important than words. The pattern reasserted itself. Stephanie finally said, "I knew it would. I told myself not to trust it, but I did anyway. And now my children are hurt. One missed visit does not erase 3 months of showing up." Miranda said gently, "It does not have to erase it. It just has to prove that I was right all along, that he cannot sustain this, that eventually something will always be more important than them. Or," Miranda said carefully, "it proves that he is human, that he made a mistake, that the woman who is apparently sabotaging him from inside his own company succeeded once, and now he knows about it and can prevent it from happening again. You are making excuses for him. I am providing an alternative interpretation." Miranda's voice was calm. "You can decide which one fits. But Stephanie, I watched him for 3 months. I watched him learn bedtime routines and sit through toddler dance recitals and explain engineering concepts to a 2-year-old. That was not fake. And one failure, especially one that was apparently manufactured by someone else, might not mean what you are afraid it means. And if it does, then you will deal with it, like you deal with everything. But maybe, before you close the door forever, you give him a chance to prove which interpretation is correct." Stephanie did not respond. She was not ready to decide anything. All she could do was sit with her hurt and her fear and her desperate hope that Miranda was right. Kevin came the next morning, early, looking like he had not slept. "I need to talk to them," he said when Stephanie opened the door. "Please." The twins were eating breakfast, still subdued from yesterday's disappointment. They looked up when Kevin entered, their expressions a complicated mixture of hope and hurt. "I'm sorry." Kevin crouched down to their level, meeting their eyes directly. "Yesterday, I made a mistake. I promised to take you to the aquarium, and I did not show up. That was wrong. You were waiting for me and I was not there, and I am so sorry." "Why?" Noah's voice was small. "Where were you?" "I was at work," Kevin said honestly. "Something happened that felt very urgent and important. But here is what I have realized. Nothing at work is more important than you. Nothing. And I should have remembered that yesterday. I should have left. I should have been here. I chose wrong." Emma had been watching him with wet eyes. "Are you going to do it again?" "No." Kevin's voice was firm. "I am making changes at my company right now to make sure this never happens again. From now on, when I'm supposed to be with you, nothing will interrupt that. Not work, not emergencies, not anything." "You said that before," Noah pointed out. "You said you would always come, and you did not." "You are right." Kevin did not flinch from the accusation. "I broke my promise, and I know that means you might not trust my promises for a while. That is okay. I am going to earn your trust back by showing you, not telling you. Every day, every visit, every time I say I will be somewhere, I will be there. And slowly, you will believe me again because you will see that I mean it." Emma slid off her chair and walked over to Kevin. She stood in front of him for a long moment, studying his face with an intensity that seemed impossible for a 2-year-old. "You look sad," she finally said. "I am sad." Kevin agreed. "I am sad that I hurt you. I am sad that I broke my promise. I am sad that I am not as good at being a daddy as I want to be." Emma considered this. Then she put her small arms around his neck. "It is okay," she said with the devastating forgiveness of children. "You can try again. Everybody messes up sometimes. Mama says that." Kevin wrapped his arms around his daughter and held her, his eyes closing against what might have been tears. Noah watched this exchange with his father's analytical eyes. "You will really be there next time?" he asked. "I will really be there." "Okay." Noah slid off his own chair and joined the hug. "But if you miss the aquarium again, I am going to be very mad." "That is fair," Kevin managed, his voice rough. "I would be mad too." Stephanie watched from the kitchen doorway, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Kevin looked up and met her eyes over the children's heads. There was no expectation in his look, no demand for her forgiveness, just acknowledgement that he had failed and determination to do better. She gave him the slightest nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, but permission to try again. It was all she could offer, and for now, it had to be enough. Over the next few weeks, Kevin was true to his word. He restructured his company communication protocols so that nothing could reach him during designated family time without going through multiple checkpoints. He confronted Vivian directly about her manipulation, and when she refused to acknowledge wrongdoing, he began documenting everything for eventual termination. He showed up for every scheduled visit, every video call, every promise, no matter how small. And slowly, painstakingly, the twins began to trust him again. Stephanie watched it all with the careful attention of someone who had been burned and was checking for smoke. But even she had to admit that Kevin was doing everything right. He was not just apologizing. He was changing systems, creating structures that would prevent future failures, taking the situation seriously in ways that went beyond words. "You are actually fixing this," she said to him one evening after the twins were asleep and they were cleaning up the kitchen together. A routine that had developed without either of them planning it. "I am trying." Kevin handed her a dish to dry. "I meant what I said. Nothing is more important than them. Not work, not emergencies, not anything. And I realized I had to build systems that reflected that priority, not just feel it." "What happened with Vivian?" Kevin's jaw tightened. "She is on administrative leave, pending an investigation. The board is reviewing her conduct. She made the mistake of putting some of her scheming in writing, which makes her situation." He paused. "Complicated. You are firing her. I am letting the process determine the appropriate response. But yes," Kevin's voice was hard, "she interfered with my children. She hurt Emma and Noah to advance her own agenda. There is no scenario where she remains employed at my company." Stephanie absorbed this information. She had expected Kevin to try to handle the situation quietly, to prioritize avoiding scandal over protecting his family. The fact that he was taking Vivian's actions seriously, treating them as fireable offenses, said something about his priorities that words never could. "Thank you," she said finally, "for taking it seriously. Taking it seriously is the minimum." Kevin met her eyes. "Those are my children. Someone hurt them deliberately." I would tear down my entire company before I let that person remain in a position to do it again. The fierceness in his voice was new, or maybe not new, maybe just finally directed at something that actually mattered. Stephanie found herself looking at him in a way she had not allowed herself to look in months, seeing not the man who had failed her 3 years ago, but the man standing in front of her now, changed, determined, fighting for his family in ways that cost him professionally. "When did you become this person?" she asked softly. Kevin was quiet for a moment. "When I realized what I had lost, when I saw Emma and Noah for the first time and understood what being absent really meant, when I had to watch them cry because I broke a promise and saw what my choices actually cost." He paused. "I did not become a different person, Stephanie. I just finally became the person I should have been all along. And I am sorry it took losing you to make me understand that." The honesty hung between them. Stephanie felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, not trust, but the beginning of something that might eventually become both. "I am not ready," she said carefully, "to trust you beyond co-parenting. I might never be ready for that." "I know." Kevin's voice was gentle. "And I am not asking you to be. I am just asking for the chance to keep showing up. For them, for whatever you need, for as long as it takes. And if it takes forever, then I will show up forever." He smiled slightly. "I am apparently very good at persistence when I care about something. I just needed to learn what was actually worth caring about." Stephanie did not have a response to that. She just nodded and returned to drying dishes, standing beside a man she was slowly learning to see as someone new. The road ahead was not clear. There were still walls to maintain, boundaries to enforce, trust to be rebuilt in increments so small they might take years to accumulate. But standing in that kitchen, doing something as ordinary as dishes, Stephanie Campbell allowed herself to consider the possibility that this story might not end the way she had always expected. That broken things could sometimes be rebuilt, that people could actually change, that second chances, given carefully and earned through consistent action, might be worth the risk. Time would tell. But for the first time in 3 years, Stephanie was willing to let time tell its story. 4 months had passed since Kevin Peterson moved to Seattle. 4 months of consistent presence. 4 months of bedtime stories and weekend adventures and the slow accumulation of trust that came from showing up even when it was inconvenient. The Vivian situation had resolved itself with surprising finality. The board investigation revealed a pattern of manipulation that extended beyond just the incident with the twins. She had been sabotaging other executives, creating conflicts to position herself as the essential problem solver, building power through chaos. Her termination was unanimous. Kevin had watched her clean out her office with the cold satisfaction of someone protecting what mattered. And what mattered was here, in Seattle, in the small moments that were slowly stitching together into something that looked like family. Stephanie stood in her kitchen on a Sunday morning, watching through the window as Kevin pushed Emma on the backyard swing, while Noah sat nearby with his bridge book, occasionally shouting instructions about proper pendulum physics. "Higher, Daddy." Emma shrieked with delight. "Higher, higher, higher. If I push you any higher, you will achieve orbit." Kevin called back. "And then we will have to explain to your mother why you are floating in space. Mama would figure it out." Emma declared with absolute confidence. "Mama figures everything out." "She does." Kevin agreed, and something in his voice made Stephanie's breath catch. "She absolutely does." Miranda appeared beside her, coffee in hand, observing the same scene with knowing eyes. "You are staring," Miranda said quietly. "I am observing," Stephanie corrected without taking her eyes off the backyard. "There is a difference. The difference being that observing sounds more professional." "Exactly." They watched in comfortable silence as Kevin finally convinced Emma to take a break from swinging and join Noah on the grass. The three of them bent over the bridge book together, Kevin explaining something while both children listened with rapt attention. "He is good with them," Miranda observed. "Yes," Stephanie admitted. "He is, and you are terrified of what that means." Stephanie finally turned away from the window. "I am not terrified. I am cautious, appropriately cautious." "You are terrified," Miranda repeated. "Because if he is actually good with them, if he has actually changed, then you have to reconsider everything you told yourself for 3 years. All the stories about who he was and why you left, and why it was the right choice. They do not fit anymore, and that is terrifying." The stories were true. Stephanie's voice was defensive. He did choose work over me. He did let me walk away. He did fail to be present when it mattered. Yes, and now he is choosing differently. So either people cannot change and he is faking all of this, or people can change and you have to decide what to do with that information. What if I do not want to decide anything? Miranda laughed softly. Then you will stay exactly where you are, watching through windows, observing instead of participating, safe and controlled and completely alone. I am not alone. I have the twins. I have my company. I have you. You have responsibilities and friendships and obligations. But when was the last time you let someone close enough to actually know you? Not the CEO, not the mother. You. Stephanie did not have an answer. The crisis came without warning, the way real crises always do. It started with a cough, just a small cough that Noah developed on a Tuesday afternoon. Stephanie gave him honey and tea and assumed it would pass. Children coughed. It was what they did. It was nothing to worry about. By Wednesday morning, the cough had deepened. By Wednesday evening, Noah had a fever. By Thursday, he was struggling to breathe. The emergency room at Seattle Children's Hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and medical terminology, and the particular terror that comes from watching your child connected to machines you do not understand. Respiratory syncytial virus, the doctor explained, her voice calm in the way medical professionals learn to be calm in the face of parental panic. RSV. In most children, it presents as a mild cold, but in some cases, particularly in younger children, it can become serious. Noah's oxygen levels are lower than we would like. We are going to admit him for observation and treatment. Is he going to be okay? Stephanie heard her voice as if from a distance. Thin, terrified. Nothing like the controlled CEO she had taught herself to be. We expect a full recovery. The doctor's voice was kind but professional, but he needs close monitoring for the next 24 to 48 hours. We want to make sure the infection does not progress to pneumonia. Pneumonia. The word hit Stephanie like a physical blow. Her 2-year-old. Her analytical, bridge-obsessed, serious little boy. Pneumonia. She called Kevin without thinking about it, without considering whether she should. He answered on the first ring. What is wrong? His voice was already alert, already worried. He had learned to read her silences in the months of phone calls and co-parenting. Noah is in the hospital, Stephanie managed to say. RSV. They are admitting him. First, she could not finish the sentence. Which hospital? Kevin was already moving. She could hear it in his voice. The sound of someone grabbing keys, heading toward a door. Seattle Children's. Emergency department. But they are moving him to a room soon. I will be there in 20 minutes. He made it in 15. Stephanie was sitting in a plastic chair in the emergency room, Emma asleep in her lap, when Kevin burst through the doors. He scanned the room until he found them, and the relief on his face when he saw her was immediately replaced by fear when he realized Noah was not with them. Where is he? Kevin dropped to his knees beside her chair. What is happening? They took him for a chest x-ray. Stephanie's voice was steady now, the initial shock fading into the numb focus of a crisis. To see if the infection has spread to his lungs. They should be bringing him back soon. And you are here alone. Miranda is with my parents. They are flying in tomorrow. I did not want to call. I was not sure if you should call me. Kevin finished quietly. Stephanie, our son is in the hospital. There is no situation where you should not call me. Our son. The words hit her with unexpected force. Not my son or the children or even Noah. Our son. The possessive plural that acknowledged shared ownership, shared responsibility, shared terror. The nurse came to get them before she could respond. Noah was back in a bed, an oxygen mask over his small face, his eyes huge and frightened above the plastic. Mama. His voice was muffled by the mask. I do not like this. I know, baby. Stephanie rushed to his bedside, taking his hand. I know, but the doctors are helping you breathe better. And Daddy is here. See? Noah's eyes moved to Kevin, who had positioned himself on the other side of the bed. Daddy. Noah's voice cracked. I am scared. I know. Kevin's voice was thick. I am scared too. But we are going to stay right here with you. We are not going anywhere. And the doctors are going to make you feel better. Promise. I promise. Kevin took Noah's other hand. I absolutely promise. They stayed like that for hours. Stephanie on one side, Kevin on the other, their son between them. Emma eventually woke up and was confused by the hospital and the machines and her brother's frightened face. Kevin held her while Stephanie explained in simple terms that Noah was sick but would get better. The night stretched on. Nurses came and went, checking vital signs and adjusting medications. Noah drifted in and out of sleep, each labored breath a reminder of how fragile everything was. How quickly the life Stephanie had built could crumble. At 3 a.m, Noah's oxygen levels stabilized. The doctor came by to confirm that the chest x-ray was clear. No pneumonia, just a bad case of RSV that would need time and treatment but would not become something worse. He's going to be fine. The doctor assured them. Another day of observation, and if he continues improving, you can take him home tomorrow evening. After she left, Stephanie finally allowed herself to cry. Quiet tears of relief that she tried to hide by turning toward the window. Kevin appeared beside her, not touching but present. "Hey." His voice was gentle. "He is okay. You heard the doctor." "I know." Stephanie wiped her eyes. "I know. It is just, I kept thinking about all the things that could have happened, all the ways I could have lost him. And I realized, I cannot do this alone anymore." She turned to face him, and the vulnerability in her eyes was something she had not shown anyone in years. "I have been pretending that I can, that I do not need help, that being strong means never admitting weakness. But Kevin, when that doctor was talking about oxygen levels and chest x-rays, I was not strong. I was terrified, and the only thing I wanted was for someone to be terrified with me. You called me. I called you," she acknowledged, "and you came. In 15 minutes, without questions or conditions or anything except being here. Of course I came." Kevin's voice was rough. "There is nowhere else I would be. Nowhere else I could be. When you called, when I heard your voice, nothing else existed except getting to you. To them." The honesty hung between them. In the fluorescent light of a hospital room, at 3 a.m, with their son sleeping peacefully and their daughter curled in a chair, Stephanie felt something crack open inside her. Not break, crack, like ice in spring making room for something new. "I have been so careful," she whispered. "So protected, building walls and maintaining boundaries, and making sure no one could ever hurt me the way you hurt me before. But Kevin, those walls are not just keeping out pain. They are keeping out everything. Connection, partnership, the possibility that maybe I do not have to survive everything alone. You do not have to survive anything alone." Kevin stepped closer, still not touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I am here, not because I want something from you, not because I am trying to earn anything. I am here because this is where I belong, with our children, with you, fighting beside you instead of being another thing you have to fight. What if you hurt me again?" The question was the core of everything, the fear she had carried for 3 years, the reason every wall existed. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. "I cannot promise I will never make mistakes," he finally said. "I cannot promise I will never disappoint you or fail at something or be less than perfect. I am human. I will get things wrong sometimes. But Stephanie, I can promise you this. I will never stop trying. I will never choose something else over our family. I will never let you face anything alone again. And when I mess up, because I will mess up, I will show up the next day and the day after that and every day for the rest of my life trying to do better." Pretty words. Actions, not words. Kevin agreed. "I know, so let me show you. Let me keep showing you. For however long it takes. Forever, if that is what you need. I am not going anywhere." Stephanie looked at him. Really looked. Not at the billionaire or the father of her children or the man who had broken her heart. At Kevin, the person who had spent months proving himself, who had restructured his entire life, who was standing in a hospital room at 3 a.m. with shadows under his eyes and fear still lingering in his expression, who had come running when she called without a single question. "I am not ready," she said slowly, "for everything, for jumping into something serious. I still need time, space, the ability to trust my own judgment again. I understand, but," she took a breath, "I am willing to try, to see if what we are building can become something more. Not rushing, not pretending the past did not happen, but not letting it define every moment of the future either." The smile that crossed Kevin's face was like watching the sunrise after a very long night. "That is all I am asking for," he said. "The chance to try." They stood there in the half-light of the hospital room, not touching but connected in ways that went deeper than physical contact. Behind them, their son slept peacefully, the crisis passing. Ahead of them stretched a future that was no longer defined by walls and boundaries, but by possibility. It was not a fairy tale ending. Real life did not work that way. There would be hard conversations and difficult moments and times when the past tried to resurface and poison the present. But standing there, at 3 a.m, Stephanie Campbell allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, some things were worth the risk. Noah came home the following evening, weak but improving. The twins had never been happier to see their own beds, their own toys, the comfortable routine of home after the strangeness of the hospital. Kevin stayed, not as a guest, but as a presence, sleeping on the couch, making meals that were slightly better than his earlier attempts, being there when Noah needed medicine in the middle of the night or Emma had nightmares about her brother being sick. A week later, with Noah fully recovered and the crisis fading into memory, Stephanie and Kevin sat on her back porch after the twins were asleep. "Thank you," Stephanie said into the darkness, "for staying, for everything. You do not have to thank me." Kevin's voice was quiet. "This is what family does. Family." She turned the word over in her mind. "We are really doing this, building something together. If you want to." Kevin looked at her, and even in the dim light, she could see the hope he was trying to contain. "I meant what I said at the hospital. I will take whatever you are willing to give, whatever pace you need, whatever boundaries make you feel safe. I do not know what I want," Stephanie admitted. "That is the honest truth. 3 years ago, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted you to choose me, to fight for me, to be the person I needed instead of the person you were. And when you did not, I built a whole new life around that disappointment. And now, you are choosing differently. You are fighting for us. You are being the person I needed you to be. And I do not know what to do with that because I never prepared for this scenario." Kevin was quiet for a moment. "Maybe," he said slowly, "you do not have to know. Maybe that is okay. Maybe we just take it one day at a time, one decision at a time, and see where it leads." "That sounds terrifying. It sounds human." Kevin smiled slightly. "Messy and uncertain and completely without guarantees, just like everything else worth doing." Stephanie found herself laughing despite the seriousness of the conversation. "When did you become wise?" "Somewhere between the first video call and the hospital room." Kevin's tone was light, but his eyes were serious. "Or maybe I was always capable of it. I just needed the right motivation." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear above the city lights. Not touching, not rushing, just existing in the same space with the possibility of more stretching between them. The following months unfolded like a careful dance. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, building trust in increments so small they were almost invisible until you looked back and realized how far you had come. Kevin officially moved into his Seattle house just 3 miles away. Close enough to be present, far enough to maintain the space Stephanie needed. They established a rhythm of shared dinners and family weekends and separate evenings that gradually became less separate. Their first real date happened on a Saturday night in March, 1 year after Kevin had learned his children existed. Miranda stayed with the twins while Kevin took Stephanie to a restaurant that was neither too fancy nor too casual. The kind of place where they could talk without performance. "This is strange," Stephanie admitted over appetizers. "Dating someone I already know this well. Strange good or strange bad. Just strange. I know how you take your coffee. I know your schedule. I know the sound you make when Noah does something particularly clever and the face you make when Emma is being dramatic. But I do not know." She paused. "I do not know who you are outside of being their father, who you have become in the years we were apart. Ask me anything." Kevin set down his fork. "I am an open book. What do you want?" Stephanie asked. "Not for the twins, not for us. For yourself. What do you want your life to look like in 10 years? Kevin considered the question seriously. 10 years ago, I would have talked about acquisitions and market share and all the external markers of success. 5 years ago, I would have talked about the same things but with less enthusiasm because I was starting to realize how hollow it all felt. Now I want to watch my children grow up." Kevin's voice was steady. "I want to be there for first days of school and basketball games and all the ordinary moments that add up to a life. I want to build something with someone that is not about impressing the world, but about actually mattering to the people closest to me. I want to be happy, not successful. Happy. They are not the same thing. I spent 35 years confusing them. What changed? You, Kevin said simply. You and Emma and Noah, seeing what I had missed, understanding what I had almost lost forever. It recalibrated everything, made me realize that all the buildings and deals and acquisitions were just complicated ways of avoiding the harder work of actually living. Stephanie absorbed this, measuring his words against his actions, looking for inconsistencies and not finding them. I want my children to have both parents, she finally said. Not just for holidays or special occasions, as a daily presence. I want them to grow up knowing what a healthy relationship looks like, even if that means I have to learn it myself. And I want, she hesitated. I want to stop being afraid, of trusting, of being hurt, of letting someone close enough to matter. I have spent 3 years being safe, and I am starting to realize that safe is just another word for alone. You are not alone. Kevin reached across the table and took her hand. You have not been alone since the day I showed up and refused to leave. Stephanie looked at their joined hands. The contact felt significant in a way it would not have a year ago. Like a threshold being crossed. I am not ready to say I love you, she said honestly. I do not know if I still do, or if I do again. The feelings are complicated, messy. I am not asking you to say anything. Kevin's thumb traced small circles on her palm. I am just asking you to let me be here. The words can come later, or not at all. What matters is this, the trying, the showing up, the building something together even when we are not sure what it is. They finished dinner talking about smaller things, movies they wanted to see, books they were reading, the particular challenges of raising twins who were increasingly developing their own opinions about everything. By the time Kevin walked her to her door, the evening had shifted something between them. Not dramatically, not in ways that would be visible from the outside, but perceptibly, fundamentally. Thank you, Stephanie said. For tonight. For everything. Can we do this again? Kevin asked. Next week, or whenever works. I would like that. She went inside without kissing him goodnight. Not because she did not want to, but because some things needed to happen slowly, needed to be earned through consistency rather than rushed through chemistry. Kevin understood. He smiled, said goodnight, and walked to his car. Stephanie watched him drive away and realized she was already looking forward to next week. The dates continued. Weekly, then twice weekly, then woven so thoroughly into their routine that not spending time together felt strange. The twins absorbed these changes with the adaptability of children who had already learned to navigate complexity. Mama and Daddy are in love, Emma announced one evening with the confidence of someone stating obvious facts. We are still figuring things out, Stephanie corrected gently. That is what being in love is, Emma countered. Figuring things out together, out of the mouths of children. The proposal came not with fanfare, but with intention. 18 months after Kevin had first learned his children existed. 8 months after that night in the hospital when everything had cracked open. They were in Kevin's backyard, the twins playing in the fort he had built for them, while Stephanie and Kevin sat on the porch watching the sun set over Seattle. I need to tell you something, Kevin said, his voice carrying an edge of nervousness that Stephanie had rarely heard. That sounds serious. It is. He turned to face her fully. I've been carrying this around for months, trying to find the right moment, the perfect words, but I realize there is no perfect moment. There is just now. This, us, Kevin. I love you, he said simply. Not the you from 3 years ago. Not the idea of you. The actual you. The woman who built an empire while raising 2 children alone. The woman who let me back into her life when she had every reason to keep me out. The woman who is fierce and protective and brilliant, and so much stronger than anyone gives her credit for. Kevin, let me finish. He held up a hand. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it, not through grand gestures or pretty words, through showing up, every day. For you, for them, for this family we have built from the wreckage of who we used to be. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I am not asking you to decide anything tonight. Kevin opened the box to reveal a ring that was beautiful but not ostentatious. Something Stephanie would actually wear. I am asking you to consider the possibility. Whenever you are ready, if you are ever ready, I will wait, as long as it takes." Stephanie stared at the ring, at Kevin, at the backyard where their children were laughing, at the life that had become so different from anything she had planned. "I do not need time," she heard herself say. "What? I have had 18 months. Stephanie looked up at him, and there were tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. 18 months of watching you show up. 18 months of seeing you become the father I needed you to be, and the partner I was afraid to want. I do not need more time to know that I want this, that the first want you, that I am tired of protecting myself from something that actually makes me happy. Is that a yes?" She reached for the ring, then stopped. "Wait. Call the children," she said. "They should be part of this." Kevin's smile could have powered the entire city. He turned toward the yard. "Emma, Noah, can you come here for a minute?" The twins came running, curious about the summons. "What?" Emma demanded. "We were in the middle of a very important dragon battle." "This is more important." Kevin crouched down to their level. "I want to ask your mama something, but I wanted you to be here when I asked, because this affects all of us." "What are you asking?" Noah's eyes had gone analytical, studying the scene. "I am asking if she will marry me," Kevin said. "If she will let us be a real family. Forever." Both children turned to Stephanie with identical expressions of hopeful expectation. "Say yes, Mama," Emma urged. "Please, please, please." "It would make logical sense," Noah added in his serious way. "We already function as a family unit. Marriage would formalize the arrangement." Stephanie laughed through her tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." The ring slid onto her finger like it had always belonged there. Emma shrieked with joy and threw herself at both parents. Noah allowed himself to be pulled into the group hug with only minimal resistance. And in that moment, surrounded by her children and the man she had spent 3 years learning to trust again, Stephanie Campbell felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Not just happy, complete. Mr. Dawson's Stories family, we are nearing the end of this journey. But before we get to the conclusion, I need to hear from you. This story started with a woman walking into a billionaire's office with 2 children he did not know existed. It became a story about betrayal and survival and the messy work of rebuilding trust from ashes. And now, 18 months later, we have arrived at a moment that seemed impossible when it began. If this story has moved you, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button, not because it helps my channel, although it does, but because every like tells the algorithm that stories about redemption and second chances and the hard work of becoming better matter. Every like says that you believe in the possibility of transformation. Drop a comment telling me what this story meant to you. Tell me about your own second chances, your own moments of rebuilding trust, your own journeys from broken to whole. And if you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We tell stories here that stay with you, stories that matter. Stories that remind you that no matter how badly things fall apart, there is always the possibility of putting them back together. Subscribe, turn on notifications, because the next story I tell might be exactly what you need to hear. Now, let me tell you how this story ends. The wedding happened 6 months after the proposal. Small and intimate. Just family and close friends in Kevin's backyard, the same space where he had proposed. Stephanie wore a simple white dress that she had designed herself, because of course she had. Emma served as flower girl, scattering purple petals down the aisle with more enthusiasm than precision. Noah served as ring bearer, taking his responsibilities so seriously that he had practiced the walk 17 times. Miranda stood beside Stephanie as maid of honor. Stephanie's parents watched from the front row, her mother crying and her father pretending he had something in his eye. Kevin stood at the altar in a simple suit, looking at Stephanie like she was the only person in the world. The vows they exchanged were not traditional. They were honest. 3 years ago, Stephanie said, "I left you because I did not believe you could choose me over everything else. I built a life alone because I did not trust that anyone would ever show up and stay. But Kevin, you have spent 18 months proving me wrong, showing up when it was hard, staying when it would have been easier to leave, becoming the partner I was afraid to want, and the father our children deserve. I am not promising you perfection. I am promising you presence. I will choose you every day, even when it is difficult, especially when it is difficult." "Kevin's turn. Stephanie," he said. his voice thick with emotion. "I spent years building an empire and ignoring everything that actually mattered. I let you walk away without a fight because I was too afraid of what fighting would require. Too comfortable with superficial success to do the hard work of becoming someone worthy of real love. But losing you taught me what I should have known all along, that all the buildings and deals and zeros in a bank account mean nothing without someone to share them with. You gave me a second chance I did not deserve. You trusted me with our children when I had given you every reason not to. You let me prove that people can change when change becomes important enough. I promise to keep proving it, every day, for the rest of our lives." The kiss that sealed the ceremony was soft and certain, the beginning of something that had been building for months, years, a lifetime. The reception was full of laughter and dancing, and the twins stealing cake before anyone said they could. Kevin danced with Emma on his feet, while Stephanie swayed with Noah in her arms. At one point, they switched, and then all four of them were dancing together, a tangled mess of family that would not have made sense from the outside but felt perfect from within. Stephanie's father pulled Kevin aside during a quiet moment. "I did not like you," Robert Campbell said bluntly. "When Stephanie told us she was pregnant and alone, I blamed you. When she struggled to build her business while raising newborns, I blamed you. Every hard thing she faced I put on your shoulders. I deserve that," Kevin said. "I was not there when I should have been." "No, you were not." Robert's expression was hard. "But you are here now. You have been here for 18 months. You have shown up in ways I was not sure you could. So, I am going to say this once. Take care of my daughter. Take care of those grandchildren. Do not make me regret giving you this chance." "I will not," Kevin promised. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." Robert studied him for a long moment, then nodded once and walked away. It was not forgiveness. Not exactly. But it was acceptance. And for Kevin, who had spent 18 months earning every inch of trust, it was enough. That night, after the guests had gone and the twins had finally fallen asleep, Stephanie and Kevin sat on the back porch of the house that would now be their home together. "We did it," Stephanie said. "We are actually married. How does it feel?" "Terrifying." She laughed. "Wonderful. Like I cannot believe we got here from where we started." Kevin took her hand. "Where we started was my conference room," he said. "You walking in with 2 children I did not know existed and a list of demands that were completely justified. Where we started was a tech conference in Austin," Stephanie corrected. "Me challenging you from the back of the room because I could not stand watching you be wrong. Where we started was the moment I let you walk away." Kevin's voice was quieter now. "And spent 3 years regretting it before I even knew what I had actually lost. We cannot change where we started." Stephanie squeezed his hand. "But we chose where we ended up. That has to count for something. It counts for everything." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere in the house, their children were dreaming. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to fail or succeed, new chances to choose each other over all the things that competed for attention. But tonight was just this. 2 people who had broken each other and healed each other and somehow found their way back to something better than what they had started with. "I love you," Stephanie said. "For the first time since everything fell apart. I love you, I know." Kevin smiled. "I love you too." Still, always, they went inside together, closing the door on the night, opening the door on everything that came next. The story did not end with the wedding. Real stories never end so neatly. There were still challenges ahead. Still moments when old patterns threatened to resurface. Still days when the work of maintaining a family felt harder than any business acquisition. But they faced all of it together. 3 years after the wedding, Stephanie's company was valued at over $200 million. She had expanded Campbell Innovation into international markets, built a team of over 300 employees, and established a foundation that provided technology resources to single parents building businesses. Kevin had stepped back from daily operations at Peterson Technologies, maintaining his position as chairman, but delegating the actual work to people who wanted it more. He spent his days coaching Noah's Little League team and attending Emma's dance recitals and being present in ways that would have been impossible for the man he used to be. The twins were thriving. Noah had developed his interest in architecture into an actual passion, filling notebooks with building designs that became more sophisticated every year. Emma had discovered a talent for storytelling, creating elaborate narratives about purple dragons and the kingdoms they protected. They had grown up knowing both their parents, knowing what it looked like when adults made mistakes and took responsibility, knowing that family was not about perfection but about showing up even when showing up was hard. On the 5th anniversary of the day, Stephanie had walked into Kevin's conference room with 2 toddlers and a world of hurt. They returned to San Francisco for a dinner that had become a tradition. "Do you remember?" Kevin asked over wine that cost more than it should have. "What you were feeling when you walked through that door?" "Terror," Stephanie admitted. "Fury. The desire to watch you suffer the way I had suffered. And underneath all of that, somewhere I would not acknowledge, hope. Hope that you would see them and be transformed. That you would become the father they deserved." Did the first. Stephanie looked at her husband. At the man who had once broken her heart so completely she thought it would never heal. At the father who had learned bedtime routines and coached sports teams and was present in every way that mattered. "Yes," she said. "You did." They finished dinner and walked along the waterfront, the city glittering around them. "I think about the version of us that did not make it," Kevin said. "The version where you did not call when Noah was sick, where I gave up after the first time I messed up, where we let fear win. There are a lot of ways this could have gone wrong, but it did not." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "We did not let it. Every time it could have fallen apart, we chose each other. We chose to try. We chose to believe that broken things could be rebuilt." Stephanie reached up and touched his face. The face that had become as familiar as her own. The face she had spent years hating and more years learning to love again. "I am glad we chose right." "Me too." They kissed under the San Francisco stars, a city that had seen them fall apart and come back together. And then they went home to the family they had built from nothing but determination and second chances. Some stories end with grand declarations, with dramatic moments that tie everything up in a bow. This story ends with breakfast, with a Saturday morning in Seattle, with the smell of pancakes and the sound of children arguing about whether dragons or dinosaurs would win in a fight, with Kevin at the stove, flipping pancakes that were slightly lopsided but made with love, with Stephanie at the table, reviewing work emails on her phone, while simultaneously mediating the dragon versus dinosaur debate, with Emma declaring that dragons would obviously win because they can fly and breathe fire, with Noah countering that certain dinosaurs had superior tactical advantages and what did dragons know about strategy anyway, with Kevin bringing pancakes to the table and sitting down with his family, no meetings to interrupt, no emergencies to steal him away, with Stephanie looking around at the chaos of her kitchen and feeling something that used to be foreign but had become familiar. "Peace. I love you guys," she said, for no particular reason. "We know," Emma replied, already reaching for the syrup. "We love you too," Noah added matter-of-factly, "even when you make us eat vegetables." Kevin caught Stephanie's eye across the table and smiled. "Happy," he mouthed silently. "Happy," she mouthed back. And that was the ending. Not fireworks or fairy tales, just an ordinary Saturday morning in an ordinary kitchen with an ordinary family that had taken the hardest possible road to become what they were. Real, messy, imperfect, and absolutely, unquestionably worth every single moment of struggle it had taken to get there. This is where I leave you, Mr. Dawson's Stories family. Stephanie Campbell walked into Kevin Peterson's world to seek justice and found redemption. Not just his, but her own. Because it takes courage to protect yourself, but it takes even more courage to let yourself believe again. Kevin Peterson lost everything that mattered because he could not see what was right in front of him, and then he spent years earning it back, one small choice at a time, proving that people can change if they are willing to do the work. And Emma and Noah, they got what every child deserves. Parents who learned from their mistakes, a family built not from perfection but from persistence, a home where showing up mattered more than being right. If this story has meant something to you, I need you to do something before you go. Hit that like button, not for me, for every person who needs to hear that broken things can become beautiful again, for every person who is wondering if second chances are real, for every person who is surviving right now but hoping to eventually thrive. Share this video. Send it to someone who needs to believe in the possibility of transformation. Someone who is in the middle of their own messy story and needs to see that endings can surprise us. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson's Stories. Turn on notifications. Because this community we are building together, it is not just about entertainment. It is about telling the truth about love and loss and the hard work of becoming better than we were. Drop a comment telling me what this story meant to you. I read every single one. And your stories, your experiences, your insights, they matter to me. They shape what I create next. Until next time, remember this. We do not get to choose our past, but we absolutely get to choose what we do next. Choose wisely. Choose kindly. Choose to believe that the best parts of your story might still be ahead of you. This is Mr. Dawson Stories, and I will see you in the next one.